Oh, yes, ladies and gentlemen, the panel, she is back. Can you refer to the panel? Now, someone just hung something in the control room on the glass, and I know I'm not supposed to read that. It must be internal, for internal use, because I can barely see the piece of paper, and I got good eyes. Anyway, what does it say, stop singing, maybe, perhaps? No, okay. I was singing during the break, ladies and gentlemen, for your information. Joining us now is our friend, Newsmax Washington, D.C. correspondent John Gizzi is back, and Grace Marie Turner, of course, president of the Galen Institute, rejoins us. Hello, panel.
Hello, Stephen.
All right, good to talk to both of you. All right, I'm not going to talk anymore about this, this whole LA Clipper thing. We certainly discussed it at length in the last panel, Grace Marie and John, just so you know. But I want to ask you, it's interesting as we talk about all of this, and we heard the media coverage in the aftermath of the statements made by the rancher in Vegas, and how that somehow indicted people like Sean Hannity and the senator because they supported him for something else before he ever said those remarks. And yet, at the same time, and this was brought up by Ron Christie on CNN about the media coverage, I hold in my hand a story from freebeacon.com. Illinois Democrat Governor Pat Quinn in some hot water with the Jewish community after his campaign tweeted and then quietly deleted several messages urging backers to read an article comparing black Republican voters to Jews who collaborated with the Nazis. Now, I would think blacks would be offended by this too, but isn't this a story? John?
I think it definitely is a story, and in particular, the media seems to be selective in its prosecution of ignorance on the part of people who become media figures. Let me give you an example. We've been hearing all about Donald Sterling round the clock. Certainly many people know a long record of the kinds of things he's saying, and yet very few people point out that he is a Democrat and a major contributor to Democratic figures, including Senator Pat Leahy of Vermont, former Governor Gray Davis of California, and the 2000 presidential candidacy of Bill Bradley. Now, does this make Bradley, Davis, and Leahy ignorant people and bigots because they have his support? Of course not. But I wish that we would not have to search and look hard for this kind of information and see it up front where everyone can get it. Now, as for Governor Quinn, mind you, this is someone whom the Chicago media has given a free ride to, and I don't mind saying that. He's raised taxes, driven business out of his state, survived a very difficult re-election in 2010, is trailing in most polls. And what you've just said, Steve, I hope it gets echoed a little bit beyond the borders of the Prairie State. That's all I'll have to say on that.
And Grace Marie, it just speaks to the double standard. There's no defending what the Clippers owner said. There's no defending what the rancher said. But when the other side, quote unquote, says it in reverse, or the same thing, but it's the other side, you would hope we had a media that would report it, but they don't.
There's no question there's a double standard and look at Hollywood. I mean, how much the liberal Hollywood directors, producers, actors get away with that a conservative would never get away with. Every single thing is scrutinized, but it also shows the real danger of this 140-character Twitter world that we live in, where we want to compartmentalize and make a decision about a complex person, a complex issue, just based upon a single narrow comment, slice, when in fact there are often many more complexities going on, and people are more complex too. So just trying to get things down to these little isolated, basically sound bites, really loses the much larger complexity of many issues in the society we live in.
All right, let me bring up something else to both of you. John, the president was in Malaysia, and he stood next to the head of the country, and I guess it was in the context of Malaysia having to do better on human rights, and he said, quote, "The United States continues to wrestle with a legacy of race and slavery and segregation that's still there, the vestiges of discrimination. We've made enormous strides, but you're going to see it continue to see this percolate up every so often." it seems to be one of the things he really enjoys doing, and that's trashing the United States of America when he's overseas.
That's right.
Well,
It's really outrageous.
again, this is very unusual because it has historically been the policy of U.S. officials that then when they're in another country, the flag follows them there, and they do not criticize their own country abroad. This was a tactic, of course, that many in the far left in the 1960s used to denounce the Vietnam War in other cities. It's a little bit shocking and disappointing to see the leader of the free world, the president, make remarks like that in another country where we've worked to encourage human rights. And I feel particularly strong about it. My late friend and colleague, Stuart Orbach of the Washington Post, upon retiring from a long career in journalism with many publications, devoted the remaining years of his life to a foundation to help start a free press in Malaysia. And those are the kinds of things we should be encouraging throughout the world: freedom of expression, First Amendment rights similar to those in our own, which have made this country great, not faulting things that we have overcome and we always work on.
Grace Marie?
Well, it really is it makes me angry. I can't imagine that there aren't millions of Americans who are outraged when the president says we have our own human rights issues we're dealing with in the United States. Certainly, we do have problems here, but they're not anything like the scale of issues that other countries are facing and citizens in other countries are facing. So it's really a matter of degree, and people miss that when the president basically equates what's going on in Malaysia to what's happening to the problems we have in the United States. And that kind of disparaging remark of the United States of America when the president is abroad, neither is beneficial for him, certainly not for America, and very likely one of the reasons that his poll numbers continue to slide. And I think the latest poll numbers show that his approval rating is only in the 40s. It's going to stay there unless he figures out how to change his attitude toward America.
Well, again, Grace Marie, you would hope that this would get more widespread coverage than it's getting, and of course it probably won't. We're coming back. When we come back with the panel, I'm going to discuss with both of you a little bit of healthcare story out today about that, and also foreign policy on the Steve Malzberg Show. Don't go away.